A man was just sentenced to life in prison for what he thought was the perfect murder. His name is Brendan Banfield. I'm going to tell you the whole story, and I'm going to do it in one part. Brendan works for the IRS as an investigative agent, which means he carries a gun. He is married to a woman named Christine, who is a PICU nurse, pediatric ICU, so, one of the best of us. And they have a 4-year-old daughter. Now, because they both work full-time, they decide they need an au pair, which is essentially a nanny that comes from another country. So they hire a woman from Brazil who's 21 named Juliana. So to go over those names again, it's Brendan, Christine, Juliana. So not too long after Juliana moves in, she and Brendan begin a torrid love affair, okay? And not too long after the affair begins, they start talking about their future. And Brendan decides that divorce is simply not an option. For one, there would be a custody battle, and who needs all that noise? Also, divorce can be expensive, and he definitely wants to keep all of his money. So he comes up with a better plan and decides to go with murder because, you guys, he's a federal agent. He's so smart, and he's 6 feet tall, so he's gonna get away with it. So him and Juliana sit down and they start planning. And the most important element, he decides, is that they need someone else to take the blame. Now, they can't hire a hitman. Hitmen talk. So how can they get someone to take the fall? Now, this is where the story gets particularly dark because Brendan and Juliana create a new email address for Christine without her knowledge. And then they use that new email address to create a profile for her on a fetish website called FetLife. And with that profile, they create a post that says that she is interested in BDSM. And in particular, she is looking for an encounter with blood play. Specifically, she wants someone to break into her home, come up into her room with a knife, and attack her. Now, this is where Brendan thinks he's so smart, and he's thought of everything, because they make sure that whenever they use Christine's computer to talk to these men that are reaching out, she is also in the home. Because if she's not in the home, someone could prove that it's not her communicating, right? So plenty of men reach out. Plenty of men reach out. And Juliana and Brendan outright reject many of them. Why? Because those men want to meet beforehand. They very wisely say, you know what, this could be very dangerous for me. I would like to meet up beforehand, see your face, make sure we have like a safe word and we're all on the same page. And fake Christine types away and says, no, you don't understand. I want this to be completely spontaneous. I don't want to see you or hear you beforehand. And so most of those men say, I'm going to just skedaddle out of this situation until Joe Ryan comes along. And poor Joe Ryan walks right into their trap because he says, you know what? I'm good with just a phone call. So he hops on the phone with who he thinks is Christine, but it's actually Juliana. Now, the day of this encounter arrives, okay? Now, on this morning, Brendan says he has this big important meeting that he needs to get ready for. So he leaves early at 7 a.m. Juliana apparently is taking the daughter to the zoo, so she also leaves at 7 a.m. Juliana leaves and she parks right outside in the cul-de-sac. Brendan leaves and he goes to McDonald's. Now, we see this on camera. He goes to McDonald's and he drives through the drive-thru, but he doesn't get anything. He says it's because his app wasn't working and he needs those points. You know, that's what I do when I'm on my way to a really important meeting. I make sure to use my McDonald's points. So he goes around again and his app is working now. So he does order breakfast and then he goes and he parks in the parking lot because he decides to eat his food in the McDonald's parking lot. Now, he's parked for a while because he actually decides to eat the crumble cookies in the back seat before he eats his McDonald's breakfast. Now, doing that made him super sick. So after he eats, he has to go into McDonald's to use the bathroom. Now, he's in the bathroom for 7 minutes before he gets a phone call and walks out to his car and drives away. Now, why does he drive away after getting that phone call? Because Juliana was sitting outside in her car waiting until she saw Joe Ryan come in, park the car in the driveway, and walk into the house. When she saw that, she called Brendan and said, "It's time. Come on over." So Brendan and Juliana walk into the house. Remember, the daughter is with them. So they leave her in the basement with an iPad while they start walking upstairs. Now, according to Brendan, he hears what he thinks are sex noises as he walks upstairs. So he thinks he's about to confront his wife having an affair. But once they walk into their bedroom, Christine sees them and screams, "Help, help. He has a knife," talking about Joe Ryan, who is attacking her. Now remember, Joe Ryan believes that this is a consensual encounter, that Christine is expecting this, and that everything coming from her, all the screams, all the shouting, all the fear, is acting. And Christine has no idea who he is or why he's here, so she's terrified. She thinks a stranger came into her home and just started attacking her. Now suddenly, she sees her husband walk into the room. He draws his gun and she feels relief because there he is, he's going to save her. He pulls his gun, he points it at Joe Ryan and says, "Drop the knife." And then he shoots Joe Ryan. Now, after he shoots Joe Ryan, he picks up the knife that Joe Ryan had in his hand. He then goes and sits on his wife and he stabs her to death. Now imagine for a moment how terrifying those last moments of your life would be if you were Christine. First, you're attacked by a stranger in your home. Then you think that your husband has come to save you, and then it is him who ultimately betrays you. Once that's done, they set the scene, right? They need to move blood around, they need to move bodies around, and once that's all ready, they call 911, and they say, "Oh my gosh, this is what happened. We came in, we found an attacker, we took care of him, but oh no, my wife, don't know if she's gonna make it, she's bleeding." Paramedics come, police come, they take Christine to the hospital. Ultimately, she doesn't make it, and Brendan acts like a grieving widow. Police, thankfully, were not fooled at all, even though he was a federal agent that's 6 feet tall. But it definitely didn't help that Juliana moved into their bedroom mere months after Christine died. So Juliana is arrested first, and initially she isn't talking. She's not saying anything. And then Brendan gets arrested, and as soon as that happens, suddenly her story changes. She decides she wants to tell the truth. I think it's because she realizes that if Brendan's given the chance, he's going to save himself. So prosecutors make a deal with Juliana. In exchange for her testimony against Brendan at trial, she is charged with manslaughter instead of murder. So Brendan is charged with murder against his wife, Christine, and Joe Ryan, the man from FetLife. He is also charged with child endangerment because remember, they brought his daughter into the basement during this whole plan. And in a gift to us all, Brendan decided to testify at trial, and he didn't do himself any favors. His affect was cold. He contradicted himself. His story didn't make any sense. He painted himself in a terrible light. In fact, one of my favorite moments of the trial is when Brendan was cross-examined about that morning that Christine died. And he said that when he confronted Joe Ryan and he pulled out the gun and he said, "Drop the knife," Joe Ryan instead pointed the knife at him and said, "You drop the gun, 'cause she belongs to me now." But the jury didn't buy it. Not for a second. They found him guilty on all charges, and the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge also sentenced Juliana to 10 years in prison, which unfortunately is the max that she could give her. But she did say that Juliana was very lucky that that was the max that she could give her, because otherwise she would have given her far more. It was very satisfying.